Welcome to the Zebra Pen, Either Way We HNC It podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Zebra Pen. I'm your host, Jed Brooks Lewis, and this is a bit different, right? Normally I have a guest over here, or sometimes over here, but today I thought I would try something a little bit new, a little bit different, and see how it goes. Firstly, as I always say, if this is your first time, thank you for giving us a shot and wanting to learn more about what makes officials tick. If you're a repeat customer, welcome back. Fantastic to have you. As I said, normally I would have a guest next to me, talk about their career, trade a few war stories. But as I say, today I want to change things up a little bit and give you an insight into how officials review their performance and how we reflect on what we do on the field. It's such a big part of what we do, and I think it's something that people who perhaps aren't necessarily officials themselves don't see a side of. But I was lucky enough to officiate at the World Games in Chengdu last month, which is a fantastic experience in of itself. Just amazing to be part of such a prestigious event. And I was even luckier to be selected as the down judge for the gold medal game. So firstly, what a game. It was like watching two heavyweights go toe-to-toe for 12 rounds, slugging it out. One team would look like they had it, then the other would come back, and they were at it all the way down to that kind of final whistle. And it was an absolute honor to be a part of. But what I want to do today is take you through my game, essentially. Talk about different calls, specific situations within the game, and give you an idea on what I look for when I do this self-analysis myself. So I've got two main ground rules for this video. Number one is I'm only going to talk about myself. It isn't really fair for me to discuss other officials, to discuss their calls. I don't have an insight into their mind or what their view on the field is. So I really want to just sort of focus specifically on situations that I was involved in and calls that I was specifically involved in. And number two is that I want to be really, really honest with you guys. I'm not just going to pull a load of clips of me doing the right thing and sit here and say, oh, look how fantastic I am. I will show you stuff that I did do well, but then I'll also show you stuff where I've made mistakes, sort of bad stuff that I did, bad practice. And I'll be very transparent about it and treat this as a real piece of reflection, which is what I will do for every game I work and I have film on. So without further ado, let's watch some clips. So this is the first play of the game. USA are going to line up in a pretty normal formation for them with Anita in a deep shotgun. Then they're going to motion Macy across into a second QB position. So for me, as soon as I saw this motion, I was thinking, okay, this is probably going to be multiple QB, since we'll always try and do a bit of scouting of teams, we'll officiate before a game. And this is something that I kind of picked up from what they were doing. So once the ball snapped, the key here is that while I'm aware that there are two QBs, I don't lose my discipline and start staring in the backfield. It can be quite tempting to do that when you're at down judge because you've got a player really close to you and you want to watch them, but the key is to stay disciplined and stay with our keys. And for me, that's kind of 5 to 7 yards downfield, anything going on in that kind of 7-yard strip. But when we have 3 QBs, that's when I do look back into the backfield and help the referee out there. But with 2, I'm keeping my focus downfield. But saying all of that, I do also need to be aware of what's going on in the backfield in case a run develops. I'm basically trying to keep Macy in my peripheral vision here. And if when she decides to take off, it means I can easily pick up the spot where she gets tackled. So you can see she does end up taking off and gets tackled a yard or so behind the line of scrimmage. And because I've kind of been keeping her in my peripheral vision, it means that I can move really smoothly back to that spot. So on this next clip, we're looking at my coverage of a short pass. So Diana is going to throw a short out route to Ana Aguayo for a gain of about sort of 3 yards. The key on these short passes is not to kind of rush to the spot, or else you end up on top of the players and in the way. You sort of see here that I push off on my left leg as though I'm going to transition to a run, and then realize kind of halfway through that it's actually a really short completion, so I don't need to absolutely hammer it downfield. So I pull out of it. If I'm trying to be perfect, which is what every official is wanting to achieve, I don't need that little step. I could have waited an extra beat at the line of scrimmage and then moved to the spot. So I do pretty well on this play, but there's definitely some room for improvement here. We get a good no call for illegal contact offense here. And this one sits between myself and Ricardo, who was a field judge on the other side of the field. So Venita is going to throw to Izzy Geraci, who's lined up in the slot, and there's contact immediately as the catch is complete. And the reason I feel like this is a good no call is there isn't really anything Izzy can do to avoid this. She turns and the defender is right there to attempt the flag pull, and they bump into each other. She hasn't started progressing down the field. She doesn't try and drive through the defender. A phrase we use a lot to describe these situations is kind of bang, bang, the bang of the ball arriving and then bang, the contact happens, and those happen almost simultaneously or very, very close to each other. And I felt at the time and still do that it would be really harsh to penalize a receiver in this situation, because it's not like she's trying to achieve extra yards. It's not like she's driving through the defender in front of her. She turns, the defender's right there, they bump into each other. I also do want you to remember this play for later, as we're going to compare what happens here with a situation that happens later in the game. This next one isn't particularly noticeable. I wouldn't expect someone watching this, especially if they're a non-official, to think, oh, well, something's good happened there. But it's a good example of just kind of how we want to be calm with our signals. So we get quite a tight catch on the sideline by Madison. And sometimes officials think that when we've got a tight decision, we need to be really urgent and really frantic and really sell the call. But personally, I don't necessarily think that's the case. So here, catch is made, and all I do is walk pretty calmly and purposefully to the spot from the line of scrimmage and just signal dead ball. We don't need to panic. We don't even really need to give the catch signal like this. Just be calm, be confident, and people won't question it. And you can also kind of see that even within a game, I'm learning. So if we consider the previous play where I was a little bit quick to move off the line of scrimmage, you get a similar gain here, but I'm much more patient with how I move. I'm much slower, and it means that I'm not kind of taking that half step and having to pull out of it immediately. I can just make it one smooth motion. So honestly, I'm really happy with how this looks. And like I say, I don't think it's anything that especially a non-official would notice on the day, but feeling good about this. So here we've got a longer completion, and it sort of contrasts with the other two plays that we've looked at, because in this one, I do need to move with a bit more speed. So Madison, who else, obviously, absolute baller, is going to catch the ball maybe 13 yards downfield. And as soon as I recognize it's a longer pass, I know I need to move a bit. And you can see before it's even reached her hands, I'm looking to get downfield and try to get towards that spot. And once I see that she's sort of dancing around a little bit, trying to avoid the flag pulls, I do ease off slightly so that I can continue to trail her by maybe 3 to 4 yards. And then once the tackle's completed, I move to where the spot is. That 3 to 4 yards is quite important. If we end up almost level with the runner, we're too close, we can get in the way, especially if they end up towards the sideline. So what we're looking to do When we have forward progress, when we have the spot, so as a down judge, that's pretty much every play. Similar sort of thing for field judge as well. But normally field judge is going to be ahead of the runner because they're looking to get to the goal line or the midline. So more specifically for down judge, we're looking to trail them by about 3 to 4 yards to keep us out of the way. The play itself here is pretty mundane. And I think it's another one that if you're just watching this game as a fan, you wouldn't notice anything about the officials here. It's just an incompletion in the middle of the field. But I've included it because it shows the benefit of using multiple balls and ball persons in speeding up a game. So once this lands incomplete, I realized that I've got a ball person with another one of the balls right next to me, and I can just get that in from my sideline instead of relying on the receivers to bring it back, which, often they do a good job of it. Sometimes I forget. I completely understand that. They're athletes. They're focused on the game. They're not really thinking about, I need to make sure the officials have got this ball. So anything that we can do to make their lives easier is super, super beneficial. Ricardo at field judge deals with getting the old ball off the field. We get it down, spotted, and the ready for play blown in just over 10 seconds, which, to be honest, is the absolute dream. We aim for about 10 seconds every play if we want to drive a quick tempo. And certainly as flag football evolves, we're looking to maximize the amount of snaps that we get in a game. And the officials are a big part of that. So from the end of the play to us blowing it in, looking for that to be about 10 seconds. And, here we basically achieve that. And it's just some really good teamwork all around. So we get a really tight interception by Alison Salazar, who had an amazing game. She absolutely balled out here. And from the broadcast angle, it does look incomplete. I think if you saw this once and only from the first angle, your snap judgment would be incomplete. But what this play really shows is the benefit of having two officials on a sideline. So obviously we have down judge and side judge on the same sideline, and we have field judge on their own. So I've got Terry at side judge here, and he's got quite a tough job because he's got players coming towards him and he's kind of having to back away from them. And although I'm a lot further away, I potentially do have a better view in some respects. And the analogy that I always use in these sort of situations is if you're standing right next to a busy road, cars whiz past and they look really, really fast. They go zoom, zoom. You can't make out details on them or anything like that. Whereas if you're, say, in a plane flying above that road, the cars actually look like they're moving quite slowly. They're still moving at the same speed as if you were standing next to it. But once you put that distance between you, they suddenly start looking like they're slowing down. And exactly the same principle applies in officiating. If you're the closest official, everything can appear to be happening really suddenly and it can be quite tricky to deal with. Whereas if you're a little bit further away, you have the opportunity to process it a little bit more. And if we look at the replay angle, you can see that Alison gets her left foot down while she's got firm control of the ball just before the right foot comes down out of bounds. You don't really get to see it on camera, but I spoke about the benefits of having two officials on the same sideline. It means that we checked with each other before we sort of signaled here. We gave each other a nod and said, we had that in bounds, and then we ruled the interception. We're into the second half of the game now, and this is the first flag that I throw. I got through the whole of the first half without throwing my flag. I love this. Every game I go into it hoping I won't have to touch my flag today. For me, the dream game is I never throw a flag. So this is my first one, and I throw it, and it's for offensive illegal contact. So Tanya Rincon is going to catch the ball at about the 13-yard line. She's going to start turning upfield. She's going to extend the ball forward to gain extra yardage. And then there's a collision at around the 15-yard line. Now, you look at it, Tanya is not particularly impressed with the call, which is totally understandable because no one enjoys being flagged. But the key difference between this and the no call we had earlier and talked about earlier, and the one that I told you to remember, is that here she catches the ball, she takes a couple of steps, and she also extends the ball out before the contact. Now, for me, this isn't bang, bang, everything just happens simultaneously like the previous one. She had options here on what she could do. She chose to turn upfield, extend the ball into the defender. It's not the worst illegal contact offense ever. I think there's enough here for a foul. What you can actually do is contrast it with this play, which was the one immediately before it. And Monica Rangel is going to come across the field, and she's running a very similar route to the one that Tanya was running. Instead of turning upfield and extending the ball, she continues laterally across the field and just goes out of bounds. And what she does a really good job of here is avoiding putting us in a position where we have to make a judgment call about the contact. What we want runners to do is make smart decisions and either go out of bounds to stop. Don't try and potentially gamble and go through a gap that might not be there, or potentially go through a player, because that puts us as officials in a position where we have to make a call, and often you're not going to like those calls, essentially. This is the very next play. I've actually shown 3 plays that all happened within the same drive here. So this is the very next play after the flag. I've actually shown 3 plays here that happened all in the same drive. What's going to happen here is Diana is going to go back to Tanya. So again, this is one where I look at it and I think I could do better here. If you are viewing it as a non-official, you probably wouldn't even notice this. But my coverage out of bounds could be better here. When a player goes out of bounds, we want to continue watching them, make sure they don't do anything, make sure nothing happens to them. So what happens here, Tanya crosses the sideline, I move to the spot, and the first thing I do is I'm turned in field and she's kind of behind me. So what I should actually be doing is continuing to monitor as she goes out of bounds, standing at the spot and pivoting on the spot to continue watching her. This isn't the worst thing in the world, especially because, as I mentioned, I've got a side judge on my sideline who can watch her as well. And when we get to the kind of the end of the clip, you see that I've turned back to watch her at the end. But the learning point here is that there was no need for me to be facing infield so quickly here. Here, I'm a little quick releasing from the line of scrimmage, and this is something we talked about on some of the previous clips. Essentially, what kind of happened here, I think, is I misread the route a little bit. Thought it was going to be a bit deeper, so I set off at a quick pace, and then it ends up being dropped on a relatively short route. And the receiver, to be honest, nearly rolled into me. And again, key learning from me here is, again, just slow things down by half a step and instead of trying to go 1,000 miles per hour, kilometers an hour, depending on where you're watching this from, and just kind of just relax a little bit. I think, there is, when you're in a final as well, even as an official, the adrenaline can get to you a little bit, and you start pushing and wanting to be everything to be bang, 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 bang. And, part of that kind of learning point for me, even 15 years into my officiating career, I still get nervous. Like, I think it'd be foolish not to get nervous. And I think those nerves can be a good thing, but it's learning how to channel them in the right way and not being too sort of tense on the field, and that channeling into like me trying to race everywhere and trying to do everything too quickly. Just a silly mistake from me here on this. And I told you I would talk about, stuff where I make mistakes. Luckily, I catch myself before this turns into anything too serious. So USA go double court back again. And after Venita throws the ball across the field to Macy, I anticipate that Macy's going to take off running far too early. And you can see that I take a little step off the line of scrimmage before she's crossed the line of scrimmage. And as a down judge, you should be holding the line of scrimmage until the ball crosses it, whether that's in possession of a runner, whether that's as a pass, regardless, you should be holding that line of scrimmage until the ball crosses it. And I take a little step here, but luckily, as I say, I catch myself and stay still. It's just a little bit sloppy from me. I think the reason it happened, looking back at it, is because every other receiver has gone deep here. And normally, as I talked about previously, I would be watching 5 to 7 yards downfield, but there's no one there. So because I've got no one in my zone of coverage, I do actually switch back to the backfield here and help out with the second QB, because what we don't want is a down judge just staring at space. I'm finding something to officiate, as opposed to just staring at grass. And because I do this, it upsets my routine a little bit, and I just get a little bit caught up, and it sort of throws me off a little bit. So when I see her start running, I think, oh, I need to be moving with her, when in reality I should be holding the line of scrimmage, letting her come past me, and then starting to follow her instead. So like I say, not the worst thing in the world, because I managed to realize what was going on, but just an area that I can probably look to address in kind of games moving forwards. This is a much better release from me. It's a mid-range pass, so I don't need to be tearing off downfield, but I also do need to get to the spot promptly. And Monica catches it, goes out of bounds, then I arrive, good coverage of her, much better than some of the previous plays that I've talked about. We get the ball in and we get it spotted nice and quickly. So yeah, this is one to make me feel better about myself after talking about some of the ones where things have gone slightly wrong previously. This one is just embarrassing, but I promised I was going to be honest. I was going to be open. I was going to talk about when I make mistakes. So I'm going to show it. Here it is. For some reason, I have no idea why. I still don't know why. Just before the snap, I got my arm up like I'm doing a 7-second count, like a referee would. Obviously, it's not my responsibility to be doing this as down judge whatsoever. For some reason, I've just decided to do it. What's really weird about this play is that all my other mechanics are exactly as they should be. Turn slightly downfield at the snap, move my body so that I'm looking in that sort of 7-yard strip that we talked about. And my focus is obviously downfield. My body just decides that my arm is going to start moving like this. And honestly, it is so strange to watch, because I don't think I've ever done this before at down judge. I've worked a lot of games at down judge. I don't do it in any other play in the game. It just randomly happens here. And it's a brain fart. It looks stupid. I hate it. It's not a trend. I wanted to show it to you that, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has stupid moments. This is one where I don't actually necessarily think there's a huge amount for me to learn from this. It was just a stupid mistake, and everyone will make a stupid mistake occasionally. It just unfortunately happens here. But like I said, it doesn't affect the game in any respect. It just looks so strange. Back to more stuff, but I think I did well. Bring the morale up a little bit in here. So we get a pass thrown to Madison Fulford here, and there's a bit of a collision at the end of it. I think she maybe wants a flag here, because I get this look from her after the ball lands incomplete, and I've been around long enough to know what this look means from a receiver. They don't have to say anything, but when you kind of get this look, they're basically implying, should there be some laundry on the field here? But looking back at it, I'm really quite happy with a no call for illegal contact. Sylvia Contreras is just going to jump this route, and basically her, Madison, and the ball all arrive at the same spot at the same time. No one's really in a disadvantageous position here. And what we mean by that is where one player is having to play through another player to reach the ball. They're just approaching it from different angles. And because of that, we end up with this collision. You know, it's something I always say about flag football is that when you have 10 players moving around at high speed in a relatively small playing enclosure, there are occasionally going to be situations where players collide, and even with the rules set out like they are, no one's really to blame for it. And I think this is a good example of that. We get an interception here, and I just want to talk a little bit about what we call reverse mechanics. And essentially, on a turnover and return, the down judge and the side judge basically switch roles. So whereas normally down judge, me on this game, I would have the spot of forward progress and be marking that. Side judge now has the spot, and whereas on a normal play, side judge should be covering the goal line or the end line. Now, me as down judge, I have to be moving to cover the goal line instead. You know, in this play, Delia Autry-Jones is going to go full poacher. It's a great bit of anticipation. She's going to jump this route for a pick, maybe 4 yards from the line of scrimmage. And once that ball's come out the hand, I've taken a step because it's crossed the line of scrimmage in the air. And as I said, that's my role as down judge. What I then have to do is make a really quick change of direction to head the other way. And if this pass was slightly longer, you know, maybe 8, 9, 10 yards downfield, I'd expect myself to be waiting at the goal line as Delia comes across it. But when it's this close to the line of scrimmage and she hits the ball on the run like this, and I've got to do a pretty quick change of direction, that probably isn't a realistic expectation. There isn't any Mexican players within 5 yards of her, to be honest. So there isn't really a need for me to be absolutely tearing back towards the goal line. It's obviously going to be a touchdown. There isn't going to be a close tackle around it. Is the ball in? Is it short? So, you know, she runs back. I'm sort of trailing a couple of yards behind. And as she goes into the end zone, I follow her, make sure we get Mexico's ball off the field and get the USA one on and spotted for the upcoming try. Speaking of tries, this is the one following on from Delia's pick six. So Ashley Clam is going to make a catch close to the sideline. And the main thing from me here is, as with previous plays, there's no need to rush with a touchdown signal. Whether you are straight up with your arms immediately or you wait an extra second doesn't really make any difference. It's still a touchdown, even if you signal it a second later or if you signal straight up, straight away. And here I take my time a little bit. Luckily, I've got Terry at side judge. We check with each other, and then I'm coming up with a nice, calm, controlled, clear signal for it. So this is my second flag of the game, and I think this was my only other flag, if I remember correctly. And again, with the two calls I made, I'm happy with these. And so Tanya Rincon's going to sort of set up and sit in the middle of the field here, and she's going to call for the ball. And once it's in the air, Delia Autry-Jones is coming from distance and jumps through her back. And we mentioned disadvantageous positions earlier, and this is very clearly a disadvantageous position because she's jumping through Tanya's back to try and reach the ball. And there's a clear impact on the play because it kind of knocks Tanya forward quite substantially. And so happy with this call in terms of the illegal contact by the defense. Reverse mechanics, which we talked about previously, perhaps could be a little bit better here. I'm slowed down because I'm reaching for my flag processing what I've seen and throwing my flag. So I can't really make a quick change of direction to go and cover the goal line during the interception return. I also know that I've got a flag for illegal contact defense, and I know that this play is coming back. So perhaps there isn't the same need to really work hard to cover the goal line here, because I know that we're giving the ball back to Mexico and we're going forward 10 yards. Slightly strange play here. Diana's going to move under center, and there's a handoff, there's a fake handoff, and everything feels a little bit kind of clunky and disjointed in the backfield, which is strange for Mexico because they're normally so well drilled. I do think, or at least at the time I thought, was there a dive here as Monica China goes forwards? But when I look at the review, I'm pretty happy that what actually happens is she just slips and falls forward as she tries to cut, as opposed to diving forward to try and avoid a flag pull. She barely gains any ground on the play anyway. There's a flag pull very quickly as well as part of it. So it would have been a really fussy and, to be honest, incorrect call to make here. So happy to just leave this alone and just move to the next down. We get an obvious offensive pass interference here that's correctly called by Ricardo at field judge across the field from me. As I said, I'm not going to specifically talk about other officials' call. What I think is interesting to talk about here is what I saw and why I didn't have a flag down on it, because it does fall into my area of responsibility as well as Ricardo's. So Victoria Chavez is going to give Amber Clark Robinson a good shove in the chest here. In terms of my priorities, I'm picking up the snapper and the receiver on my side, so I don't get the best look at it. What I did see was this collision here where Amber bumps into Delia, and I didn't know what had caused this. I just saw two USA players bumping into each other. So I held on to my flag because I didn't have a view on it, but it's obvious on the review that it's the shove from the receiver that pushes the two defenders together. So Mexico are now driving down the field with less than 30 seconds on the clock, attempting to win the game. This play, again, looks pretty innocuous, but when you break it down, there's a lot going on. As soon as Victoria Chavez wheeled out towards my sideline like this, I was thinking, watch her feet to see if she steps out of bounds, because if she did and she wasn't forced out of bounds and then went on to touch the ball, we'd have a foul for illegal touching. And she gets super, super close to the sideline, but just stays in. And then as she starts to move downfield, I'm looking for any potential pass interference from either player. The defender actually has a much better position on the ball because Diana slightly sort of underthrows it. So I'm mainly looking to see if Victoria is going to try and play through that defender to get to the ball, but luckily we don't get anything, so we just have an incomplete pass here. Which brings us to the final play. You've probably seen it. Flores, Chavez, back of the end zone for the win. It was a crazy moment. And to be honest, that bit's quite easy. What isn't easy is whatever the hell happened here at the front of the end zone. And I've watched this play so many sides, and I see all the different kind of arguments to it. Defender on the right hand side of the formation is going to gamble, and she's going to try and jump Sylvia's route for the pick, and that's what ends up leaving Victoria open in the back of the end zone. But you know, what are we thinking about this collision? So, like, firstly, this happens a long way from the ball. 8, maybe 9 yards away from the ball where this happens and where the ball's eventually being caught. And it happens during the pass as well. And I'll be 100% honest here. My head is kind of pointing in that direction, but my focus has shifted to the back of the end zone where Victoria is, because that's where the ball's going. This is the moment. Like, we're so far away from this collision is so far away from where the ball's going that I kind of got an eye on it in my peripherals, but we want to make sure that we nail this call at the end. Is she close to a sideline, an end line, whatever? We want to make sure that call is nailed on. So this is, as I say, kind of in my peripheral vision a little bit, but just breaking it down from a rules perspective. So when this collision happens, the ball is in the air. So no one out of receivers or defenders has right of way over the other. It's all about advantageous and disadvantageous position. And given the ball is being thrown to a receiver who's 8 or 9 yards away, I think we can discount that because no one out of these two players has a better shot of it. The defender doesn't really have right of place as she's dancing around a bit. So even with the jump, she hasn't established it. I think Sylvia sees her kind of step into her path and tries to slow down to avoid her. And they come together. Maybe Sylvia hits the defender farthest out first. Maybe the trailing defender bumps into her first. It all happens pretty much simultaneously. But what happens is everyone sort of bumps into each other and we get this quite ugly collision. But like I say, I find it really difficult to attribute blame here because I think everyone's just got their eyes on the ball, and I don't think, this isn't as though Sylvia's running over a player with right of place, but it isn't like the defender, on the outside defender is jumping into her. I don't know whether the trailing defender pushes her at all or anything. I think it is just really unfortunate timing that everything sort of happens at once and we end up with a bit of a mess at the front of the end zone. And I appreciate that there's probably a bit of unconscious bias here from me because it was a no call on the field and I want to defend the call that's made on the field. Given the context of all of this, I think, as I say, it's really hard to attribute blame and a foul to a specific player here. So that brings us to the end of this review. Hopefully it's provided a useful insight into how officials reflect after games and what we look for, how we self-analyze. Normal service of interviews will be resumed next time, so tune in then too. Thank you so much for watching. Always a pleasure to share my passion with a wonderful audience, and goodbye.